It's James Lupton, delighted to be joined today with Johnny Nelson. We're here today for another episode of the Fighter Podcast. Today we'll be discussing the story of Brendan Ingle from your point of view, Johnny.
Yeah.
I'll just start off with a quote that you gave me 6 years ago. Without Brendan, I wouldn't have boxed. From the first day I set foot in that gym, I knew I couldn't have boxed if I walked into any other gym. Talk to me why.
Without a doubt, it wasn't about being a hard fighter. It wasn't about being a hard man. It wasn't even about boxing. It was about feeling as though you belong somewhere, as though you were a part of something, part of like a family. I had a great family at home, but I was a mummy's boy. So you saw the people you knew with having friendship groups and everything, and that the gym was my friendship group. The gym was a place where I wasn't great at school, but I learned learning was actually um, pretty good at the gym. You know, it was about using that, using common sense, not using pen to paper, not using trying to figure out mathematical um, um, situations. You know, it's like probably like human maths. So I was very. It was a great education, and so that's why to me I loved being there. That was my school. My schooling started then.
You mentioned it's like a family. Brendan was the father figure in the gym. And like all father figures and all parents, they teach values, manners.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about Brendan, who'd make you guys go out litter picking, who'd help you get the help carry the shopping for the elderly locals, things like that. Talk to me about
I think Brendan, when he got us to do that, it was about, he said, if we all take care of our own doorstep, the world will be a better place. I know it sounds so corny, but it's so true. And you'd drive up Newman Road, and any given morning, you'd see Harold Graham, Brian Hanson, you know, myself, all the fighters at some point pulling the weeds out of the pavement, sweeping the streets. And people would drive past and think, how's Brendan getting them up to do that? And only Brendan could. And it was part of being in the gym. You know, I suppose it's like a footballer being at a club. His job is to, you know, at some point, his job is to clean everybody else's boots. His job is to clean the kit, and that was that. That was part of our training. That was part of us. So it wasn't just about learning to hit something. It's about humbling yourself. It's about checking your ego. Um, and now I'm older, I understand that's what it was. At the time, you did it. You just did it, and you weren't bullied into it. But you just did it. Brendan just seemed to have that ability to you struggle to lie to him. You just struggle to lie to him. The truth would fall out your mouth. And you think, oh God, what did I say? But you just can't help it. That's what Brendan would do.
Do you think that was also a way of teaching a bit of discipline and respect as well?
I think that's what it was. I think that was part of it. When you use his sweeping brush and any of the kids would complain, Brendan would say, "You should be paying me because I'm letting you use my tools, and I'm teaching you how to sweep or whatever." But of course, it was. You know, now I'm older, and you look back on it. That's exactly what it was. It's about discipline, teaching you how to be humble, putting your ego in check, and the ones that didn't do it, the ones that struggled to do it, they're the ones that you could see affected their career later on in life. It affected them as fighters, and so I just think, you know, it was unbelievable training, smart, clever. How Brendan thought about it, but he always thought outside the box, and with him thinking outside the box, you know, we got results that no other gym was getting. I think there's a stat where our gym got, I think it was six, 5 to 6 world champions, 16 to 17 British champions, 8 to 9 European, 12 Commonwealth, you know, in one gym, in that gym in Sheffield alone. And so, and he always said, if you if you create one champion, people say it's luck. If it's two champions, say, hey, all right, you've not done bad there, you know. But when you're creating 3, 4, 5 champions, it shows you're doing something right. and he was doing something right, because it wasn't just about going in the gym hitting the bag. It was about the muscle that everybody neglects to train, and that's the mind. And there's many ways to train the mind.
I think it's fair to say Brendan's methods were unorthodox, but they worked. Have you ever, you've been in boxing a long time, you're still involved in boxing now. Have you ever seen any other gym that does anything remotely like Brendan?
No, no, not at all. Brendan used to use the phrase "free smart." So I can be too smart for you. When I'm three smart, I'm outsmart myself. So you've got people that try and make out as though they're really clever, creating all these ingenious um, notions, ideas, philosophies, but really they're making themselves look stupid. There's no logic to their thinking. Brendan wasn't a coach; he was a trainer, a life coach. He was a teacher, and there is none left. There are coaches that are coming through that attract that, and they've got to go through years of hard knocks. Peter Fury, Joe Gallagher, people like that. But they've got to go through the licks and go through the time, and they'll not get the credit they deserve. And Adam Booth, they'll not get the credit they deserve, but they've got to go through it. And a young man coming through, Angel Fernandez, he's a young guy. He's not going to get the props. Dominic and John Ingle were fortunate enough to be the sons of Brendan, and they saw it inside out. So they understand what's important in training fighters. It's not just the physical; it's the mental more than anything else. It's life coaching.
One of Brendan's unorthodox things that he used to do in the gym, or make you fighters do in the gym, I've been told, is to get in the ring and sing a song. And I believe a standard in there was "I Can Sing a Rainbow."
Yeah.
Did you
Um,
sing? What did you have to sing?
Everybody has to do it. So, or if we had um, some dignitary come in the gym, um, or they'd come in and Brendan would be saying, "This lad's this, he's done that, he's from here, he's boxed this amount of fights," and he'd get us all around. And then you could see everybody backing up because he knew he was going to say, "Here, come here, shadow box." Shadow box means you've got to shadow box and sing in tune to the shadow boxing. Red and yellow, and pink and green. Now, when you've got to do that in front of a stranger, and you're a young man or you're a teenager coming through, you don't want to do it because it's kind of embarrassing. He wanted you to feel comfortable and confident to be yourself, no matter where you are, who you stood in front of, and to be you, to own who you are. And even though a lot of us shied away from it, we did it. I remember when Lennox Lewis came into the gym. That was when he was, catapulting himself through, around the country. I think he boxed in Hull at one point, and Lennox Lewis came in the gym. I think he might have been casing it out to see if he wanted to train there. And Brendan did the same old what he did. He came in and said, "How old are you? Can you read? Can you write? Can you reckon up? Tell me about yourself." And Lennox is like, "Nah, I ain't doing none of this stuff." Lennox Lewis, Clinton Woods. Brendan's teaching was alternative, an alternative way of teaching. And when you come in the gym, unless your mind's open, you'll be found out the second you walk through the front door. And when I walked in the gym, he said, "Tell me about yourself." And as I started to speak, he said, "Turn to the wall, face the wall, 5 inches away from the wall. Tell me about yourself." Now, if I told you to do that, and you're surrounded by a crowd of people, you're gonna feel stupid. You're gonna struggle to think of things to say about yourself after 30 seconds. But what Brendan's doing is he's building your confidence, self-belief, your ownership of you, where you don't care what you think. And it was just his way of training and thinking started the first time you walked in the gym. Multiculturalism is such a buzzword these days. Our gym was multicultural 40 years ago. And that could only have ever happened with Brendan. He was a proper circus master. He understood how to talk to everybody. And one of his rules were parents had to stay at the door, because a lot of the time the problem is the parents. So when you're training a kid, "I tell me this, I tell me that, you can't do this." Brendan said, "Come out." Now I want your son or your daughter to stand on their own 2 feet, take responsibility for everything he does. When your parents are there, you're gonna look. You've got an excuse. So he wouldn't let parents in the gym. They had to stay at the door, drop the kids off you go. And some people took advantage of it. Some people used it as a babysitting service. They drop the kids off for a couple, 2 or 3 hours, go to Meadow Hall or go and do whatever they're doing. They loved it. But Brendan, I rated him because he managed to. He was married. He had 5 kids, and the 50, 60 kids in the gym, and their family and their family's problems, and how he managed to juggle the lot. I've no idea. He lived across the road, so and there's not many occasions where I was at the gym and Brendan wasn't. And that's the kind of coach he is. He was. But that's not that's the kind of coach that don't exist anymore. They're not there. You know, and even if they make enough money out of boxing to make a living out of boxing, they're not there. They're not present. Brendan was in the gym, and 95% of the time. And I said, if I ever be a trainer, I'll be a trainer like him. And if I can't be the trainer like he was, I won't do it. So if I can't commit and give the time and focus to the fighters like Brendan did to us, I know how I'm underselling myself and underselling the not doing the fighter any favors. So I just won't do it. And I told Brendan this: unless I can do it like you, I won't do it. Yeah, I can motivate fighters. I can probably great tactics for them to navigate their way through fights. But if I can't be there, be as present as Brendan was for me, I know that's what makes you into a champion. Because if he can make me into a champion from when I started, that tells me that works. So unless I can do that, I won't do it. And so I'd probably do it. I'd probably immerse myself into it when I finish working at Sky, something like that. But whilst I'm doing what I'm doing, I'll advise fighters. Um, I'll try and point them in the right direction. Um, that's what I do because I know the game inside out, like it or not. But to be a coach, I won't do that until I can fully commit myself to it.
People will say they're one step ahead. Brendan seemed to be 15, 20 steps ahead. Now, you didn't have the best start to your career. And like you said, you didn't really take boxing that seriously. You went in to make friends. However, Brendan told you you wouldn't be good until you was in your 30s. Just go back to that moment. What did you think at that minute when he told you that?
I thought I'm not going to box when I'm 30. That's old. I thought 30 is old. I'm not even boxing when I'm 30. He said, you won't come good until you're in your 30s and you're a mummy's boy. You need to move out of your mum's house. I said, I'm not a mummy's boy. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. I left the gym and told my mum what he said. And so she said, he's right. I'm like, what? And I was a mummy's boy. I had no ambition because I was happy being at home with my mum. I had no ambition to achieve what I achieved. I had no ambition to go anywhere because my richness, my wealth was being around family, being around my mum, being so I didn't need anything else. We were poor, but we were wealthy in family. So I didn't have that hunger, that desire, I must do this because I was happy at home. Days, some days when it came to going to school, mum would say, "Do you want to go to school today?" If you give me the choice, I said, "Nah." It was my choice. And but obviously, when you stayed at home, you had to do chores. So I'd go to school for my friends. But I was content at home. So he was right. I was a mummy's boy because you need to create a fire, an ambition, a want to go on to the next level, next stage in your life. Brennan could see that straight away. I held on to my mother's coattails. I'm like, I'm all right here. I'm cool. I don't want to do any of that stuff. I'm all right. Keep that. This is my wealth.
Flip it, go forward to when you became good, as he said, in your 30s. You was the longest reigning WO cruiserweight champion, still hold that record, most defenses, etc. Now, at that moment, did you sort of think back to that moment when he said you'll come good in your 30s and think, shit, it was right?
Without a doubt. As I said, I thought 30 was old. And then once I'd figured out I could fight, and once I believed in myself, Brendan was the only person that believed me. I didn't even believe in me. Once I believed myself and actually believed I was good, then I understood the lessons he was trying to teach me. I understood that, and I really believed I was the best fighter in the world. It doesn't matter if anybody believed me or not. I believed I was the best fighter in the world. And when I say that, you've got to have an arrogance as a fighter. On this earth, there's just under 8 billion people. So you've got to believe you are the best fighter, best fighting man or woman or beast at your way in the world amongst 8. So can you imagine what kind of arrogance that you need to have for that? I believed that. And as long as I had that belief, then the penny dropped. I thought, yeah, I am. I can fight. I can beat anybody. Once the penny had dropped, and that's an accumulation of being a product of the gym.
We're going to go back and forth down the timeline. Go to current times. You're obviously working with Sky Sports. You're doing your punditry, your analysis, etc. Now, I sat down with somebody who was in the gym with you a long time ago, recently for some dinner, Richard Holden.
Yeah, oh
And
yeah. Oh my goodness. That's
yeah,
bloody yeah.
and he was telling me how Brendan would make you guys do interviews. Every time someone comes to interview, whether it be Harold Graham, Naz, one of these guys, Brendan would make everybody do the rounds and do the interviews. Do you feel
Mm.
Brendan built you into your career now?
I think it was yes, but let me tell you. So, say for instance, every Saturday morning, a bunch of us would have to go up to Radio Sheffield, and he'd bring us all in the gym. And there was a really nice guy called Robert Jackson. He had a show on the radio, and we went to the radio station. It was a big deal, and he'd make us all talk on the radio and talk about what the gym's doing, where we've been that week, who's for, and it was a good crack. But it brought fighters on to think I'm in an area where I'm on the media, people can hear me, and it made you talk, stop you stuttering, speak correctly, like tell your story. When you tell a story, you've got to tell a story where if you were a blind man, you could feel, you could understand, you could picture everything I'm saying to you. That's telling a story. That's explaining yourself. And that's what Brennan kind of taught us to do. Every little detail, from walking through the door and on the left-hand side, there's a turned over cup or whatever. As you walk in, but you throw it in the story and you become great storytellers. But in doing that, you've got to train to do it. To train to do it, first of all, you've got to be comfortable in your environment. You've got to be comfortable talking to strangers. You've got to be comfortable and not conscious of what people think of you. Because that's what happens to most people. When they go out to talk, they think they get embarrassed and get uncomfortable because they think, God, they're going to think I'm stupid. They'll think I'm dressed horrible. They'll think I'm my accent's whatever. You've got to not care about that. Your job is to go up there and tell a story. And Brendan drilled it into us from a young age. All of us, every single one of us. There's not many of Brendan's fighters that actually are bad communicators, and that's part. So again, you've got a boxing coach, a trainer, a teacher that's teaching you all the aspects of being a fighter. And he understood back then it's not just about being a good fighter. You've got to be the whole package. Fortunately, what he taught me helped me in my job today. I remember the first time I was a guest on Sky Sports, and they sent a camera to where I was. I think it was the gym or whatever, and I've got to talk down the camera on the live. So when you're talking down the camera on the live, you've got to talk to that camera like I'm talking to you now, as though you feel I'm talking to you. Most people are, they're not understanding the importance of what you're doing, and so I know at Sky, the boss then said, "You know what? I like him. He gets it." Now this is something that we're taught in the gym from day dot to actually be able to speak to people, articulate to people, and feel comfortable in oneself when you're telling a story.
With yourself in your role with Sky, you've got obviously Nassim Hamed, who got rave reviews when he was doing his punditry with ITV a while back now.
Yeah,
Got the likes of Dave Coldwell, who's got fingers in all sorts of parts of his promotion, his management, his
yeah,
training, etc., and also does his punditry here and there. Richard Sauer is another coach at the moment, also. there's so many fighters who've come out of training with Brendan who have gone on to other careers off the back of their boxing. That can't be a coincidence.
Without a doubt. Most of the gyms in Sheffield, and not all, most of the gyms in Sheffield are from ex-Ingle fighters or ex-Ingle boxers, and so that tells you something. So it wasn't about just training you as a fighter. Some guys that train there were never going to be good fighters. Some guys that trained there started off as really bad fighters, but ended up being brilliant fighters. Some fighters like Harold Bomber Graham, Prince Azim Hamid, myself, Junior Whitted, Ryan Rolls, all of us managed to get to beyond domestic level to establish ourselves at European and world level. And then on top of that, being able to articulate ourselves and own who we are. But most of the fighters you never heard of because their teaching was life. We are the fighters you see that are on TV, the fighters you see that have succeeded. We're the tip of the iceberg. Underneath us, there are so many people that train at the gym that were probably not good boxers, but became good people. You know, good mothers, good fathers, good students, whatever. And that's Brendan's success. We are just the door openers to say, well, this is what he does. So when you see us, you think, wow, look at all the champions he's produced. That's nothing to the lives he's changed from people working in the gym.
Obviously, everyone talks very positively and full of praise for Brendan. Was there ever times in the gym where he was down, maybe after a fight has lost or something like that? Did you ever see a bad side to Brendan, or not a bad side, a downside, or a disappointed or not?
Oh, of course. Listen, Brendan loved his fighters, and so he wanted what was best for them. But he understood. His words were, "You can't be everybody's cup of tea." So basically, not everybody's going to like you. And if you lost or if you failed, then you failed for a reason. We can fix that. And he simplified things that we as humans are so busy overcomplicating. And he was very good at it. And so Brendan, on his down days, you could see his brain ticking over. Right, we're going to do this. Right, we're going to do that. I can remember him painting the lines on the floor for our footwork. I can remember him constantly for weeks thinking of some kind of pulley turning system for the speedball so it bounced in every direction. He was always looking at the next thing to get the best out of the fight, to train the fighter. Now, at the time, people didn't understand what he was doing. But now you look back and you think, genius. And because the kind of fighter Brendan was, he wasn't like us. So he said, how I fought will get you hurt. You know, I'm going to make sure the art of fighting is to hit and not be hit. He prophesied to you about Floyd Patterson, Jack Johnson, Rocky Marciano, Sugar Ray Robinson, all the old school fighters. He would be telling you their story. And he'd be telling you their story to humanize them, to basically let you understand there is no difference between these history makers and us at all. The only thing is that they became successful in what they did. They're not superhuman. They're not Spider-Man. They're not Superman. They're not. So he's basically saying everything's achievable. They're all the worries that you've had, they've had. Talking about Floyd Patterson used to go to a fight with a disguise in his bag because he was so scared of losing. And if he lost, he was going to put the disguise on to walk out to get out the back door so nobody recognized it. You wouldn't think that of Floyd Patterson. You know, Jack Johnson was drummed out of his country because of how he conducted his life. He was years ahead of his time. So he talks about the worries, the successes, the pressures, the temptations, the weaknesses of antic temptations, such as Roberto Duran once he beat Sugar Ray Leonard. As far as he was concerned, he'd done it, but then he spent 6 months partying. Sugar Ray Leonard thought, no, I'm going to get him. You know, so it shows the highs and the lows. It shows that when people are successful, that's when the real work starts. That's when the real battle starts. All fighters think the hardest thing is becoming champion. It ain't. The hardest thing is staying champion, because to become a champion, you've got to focus. You've got a hunter's mentality. You're hungry. Once you become champion, Where's your focus? Where's your drive to stay there? Because your drive all the time was chasing something. Now you're the one being chased. So now you've got the hunted mentality. And so not everybody can have the hunted mentality and stay at the top. You've got to be king of the hill. So the hardest battle is being champion. And most of the fighters out here think, I want to be champion, I want to be champion. Be careful what you wish for. Because you're seeing most champions lose it after the second or third defense because their drive and their ambition, their mindset they're lost. So my drive, once I knew I was the best in the world, was not to be world champion. I just want to keep beating people. I want to be the best. Princess Mohammed was the same. And so once the fighters amongst us that got it, we really got it. And when I became champion, I knew I wasn't going to make me even more hungry. I thought, nah, I'm going to chase unification. I want to prove to everybody I'm the best in the world. I didn't get a unification, but I knew I could have been the best fighter in the world. I could have beaten the WBC, WBA, IBF champion. I knew these guys. At one point, Vasily Gurov, he was IBF champion. I was in Vegas fighting Sierra Pele. He was at box on the card as well. We both were training in the gym in Vegas. He was in one ring. I was in another. I'm checking it southpaw. I thought I could do him. I knew I could do him. I said, Brent, let me get me that fight. I knew I'd take the IBF title off. When Carlos Gomez was the WBC champion, he was an amazing Cuban fighter, defected from Cuba, went to Germany, set up life in Germany. He was the guy they said was top dog. They flew me out to Germany to commentate on this guy's fight. After the fight, he won easily. And he said, we have got Johnny Nelson in the audience. What do you think? What about fighting him? He said, you can't pay me enough money to fight that guy. Now I'm in Germany. I could speak German. I could help with that. So I knew. I thought, my God, why are people at home not seeing this? So I knew I was the best fighter in the world. I knew that, but nobody else knew. So that was my hunger. That was my drive. That was my motivation. But that's the hardest thing for fighters. Once they become champion, you've got to keep your head. Don't think I'm a god. I don't have to work as hard. Don't think you work twice as hard, because the responsibility of being champion is this. Once you're there, a kid that's probably just started to turn professional, you're his target. So he's got 5-6 years to plot and plan to beat you. The responsibility of being that champion is you've got to beat somebody that's had all that time to have a blueprint to beat you. You've got to beat that kid in 12 weeks' notice, 10 weeks' notice. That's what a championship. That's what a champion's made of. You can beat all oncomers, and that's the hardest thing about it. And that's why when you're champion, there's only a handful of world champions out there now that believe they are the best fighter in the world. The rest of them are on a hustle.
You mentioned Brendan would teach you the ups and the downs of these great fighters in the past. When it came down to your gym and your fighters in there, when it did lose, did it keep them grounded? Did it make them think, well, they've done it, it's happened to people previously, it's not the end of the world?
Yeah, without a doubt. And you talk you through it. You say, right, look, we fight like a dysfunctional family in the gym, but we travel like a pack of wolves out of the gym. So when one fought, we all went out. We all supported him. We were all there. Brendan encouraged industrial language in the gym. He encouraged us to squabble. And encouraged it. The reason why, but it was squabbling in a jokey kind of sense. The reason why, because he knew when you went out to fight, you're going to get intimidated, you're going to get undermined, you're going to get robbed, you're going to win, lose, and draw. When you're walking in the gym, you're in the ring, your opponent supporters will shout everything left, right, and center to get in your head and to upset you. If you're used to this, then it makes no difference to you. And so that's why I encouraged it in the gym, and so you just laugh at it and think, yeah, all right, whatever, very worse. And so when one lost, he'd actually, everybody lift each other, because if I knew we had a European champion there, world champion there, British champion there, why can't I do it if they can do it? Because I'm getting the same training, I've got the same coach, I'm doing the same things. So it's something I can fix. It's not an impossible task. It's not an impossible ask. And so therefore, success breeds success. And that's why the ups and downs were part of your journey. You can't get wisdom without going for experiences, both good and bad. So you can't just have all good experiences because you ain't getting wisdom. If you get bad experiences as well, now you've got a balance. Now you understand, right, that works, that doesn't work. This is called wisdom. So Brendan wants you to have experiences so you become wise.
You mentioned their ups and downs, highs and lows. I want to talk about a low. I want to talk about Brendan's passing and
Yeah,
the impact it had on everybody who knew him. Numbers came out for his funeral. So many people were there. Just talk to me about your personal perspective of that and just how devastating was his passing for you.
devastating for me. I can talk about it freely now. At one point, I couldn't string two words together when it came to talking about Brendan and him passing away. Now, and I've got mad because I wanted to try and let people know how important, how good this guy was. But it was just too much of an emotional uh, experience to talk it through. Now I can. And his funeral, I couldn't believe the turnout outside the cathedral in Sheffield. The people that were there, I thought, Brendan, when did you have time to help these people? You'd be walking, yeah, Brendan did this for me, Brendan. I'm thinking, when? When did you have time to help these people? And it was proper heartbreaking because I think it was the biggest loss up to that point in my life for me. And so I'm not great at dealing with grief. And so for me, it aged me. To me, something was missing. To me, it proper knocked me for six. Um, those days come for everybody. But if you're hitting grief, that kind of grief for the first time, then it's just a hard one. And you can get over it when you're younger, but when you're older, it's just harder to get over it. And you think, that guy was always there. Um, he was always like my point of call. He was my advice. He was the one that, if there was a problem, in his unorthodox way, he'd figure it out. I go to the gym now. I go inside. It's the most comfortable place in the world for me. It's the only place I feel at home. Um, and it'll probably always be like that. And that's what he created. I wouldn't be the man I am today if it wasn't for him. I wouldn't have achieved the things I've done. I wouldn't have the job I've done. I wouldn't have a lovely house I've got if it wasn't for Brendan. Um, and so I feel blessed that I happen to be in Sheffield, where this guy came from, a little place in Dublin called Ringsend, married a Protestant, and stayed in Sheffield. I was fortunate enough to see him. Most guys have to travel from other countries or from down south and stay in a bedsit to stay in Sheffield to train in the gym. I just had to catch two buses, and so I was so honoured. And the one thing you can't get punished for is envy and jealousy. And I used to be probably envious of Brendan's kids because when we leave the gym and his kids are walking home, I think, God, you live with Brendan. The stories he tells you, and I suppose if he's your dad, after a while you think, oh, Dad, shut up. But to me, it was a big deal. To me, that person. He was that person for me. And when I talk about a good man, he was a good man. No airs and graces. Somebody's legend, he's a legend, this, that, and the other. Brendan was a legend, a good man. And he was misunderstood. He was very unorthodox in his teachings, but his heart was in the right place. And if you knew him, you get him. If you didn't know him, you wouldn't understand him. But our gym wouldn't be our gym, couldn't be our gym unless Brendan was the orchestrator.
What's your funniest memory or story of your time with Brendan?
Oh, there's many. I can think of one or two, but I think one was when sometime at one point he was trying to tell us all off about buying flash clothes and spending money on expensive jewelry and things like that. And Brendan, money was not his god. And Brendan, his wife dressed him. His wife, like, she'd buy him his clothes. And Brendan was going to an event, or he'd been to an event in town, and he had a lovely suit on, shoes and every shirt and everything. So as he's telling us about blowing our money and and not saving our money, you'll end up skin. Naz said to him, Bren, you know those shoes you've got on? They're worth about 300 quid. That suit there, it's 800 quid. He said, what? What? That's a Paul Smith. That's a this. That. What? What? He's looking at his clothes. And he said, so why are you telling us about buying expensive clothes? Brendan had no idea. And I bet Alma was probably pissed off at Naz for like tipping him off. Brendan stormed out the gym, left the gym. Then he came back in with it. He used to have this, I think it was pink or bluey. I don't know if do you know what mohair is. He had a mohair jumper, a woolly mohair jumper, his rigger boots, and his workman trousers. And he come back in the gym in them because he must have given his wife a right mouthful because he didn't realise when he was lecturing to us, he was actually wearing that kind of stuff. But Brendan was he was a simple man. He didn't want any flashy. You know, he put a shirt and tie when he had to. For the rest of the time, he dressed for the gym, and that was Brendan.
Have you got a favourite memory, a most cherished memory?
Most cherished memory. Wow. Let me think. There was a time where at the back of his house, we were concreting the floor at the back of his house. So Brendan, I was shuttering. He was teaching me how to shutter the concrete to level it out, and we had to mix the cobble, everything all day long. We're working, and the phone rang, and Brendan went in the house, and I'm shutting the concrete, leveling the back out, and he said, "Johnny, we're fighting tonight. Get yourself home. Go and get washed. We're fighting." So I had to go home, get showered, get changed, get my kit. We shot to London to the Grosvenor Park Hotel, and I booked a guy called Gypsy Carmen. Yeah, I'm sure it was London. And I won, and it was funny because I thought, and Brendan, as we come back up, Brendan said, "Can you imagine this morning we were laying concrete, then you got the call." He said, "That's what champions are made of." I was a journeyman. Everybody, they needed an opponent, someone to lose, and they'd keep making the mistake of picking me. Brendan, there used to be signs, and Brendan always say, "We were the blacks before you were." He said the signs in Attercliffe used to say, "No blacks, no travellers, no blacks, no travellers, no dogs, no Irish." He said we were below the dogs. We were below the dogs. He said, "So if you think you've had it hard," and but he was like a good man, a really good man. He knew people, and that was his education. That was his smarts. Brendan wasn't. He read, but and his house was full of so many books of so many philosophers and warmongers and stuff like that. But it'd take him ages to read a book, and he'd read a book, and if there was a word that he didn't understand, Alma was a very clever, intelligent woman, and he'd ask Alma, then look it up in the dictionary what the word meant. So a book that would probably take you a week to read, it'd probably take him a month because every word he'd stop and what's that mean? What's that mean? But for as long as I know, that's what he did. And his array of books, Marcus Aurelius, Genghis Khan, from left, right, and centre, he was so well read. But his words were, "I like to play the thick paddy," because then people underestimate you. I'll tell you a story. I was boxing a guy called Crawford Ashley. Crawford Ashley was the man. He was the don. He'd done good amateur, big things are expected of him, and they needed an opponent for him. I was like, I probably had 5, I'd won 2. I can't remember what point in my career it was, and so I was to fight Crawford Ashley. So Brendan, genius, he said to me, right, his trainer is what we call culture Irish. And I went, "What's that mean, Bren?" He said, "They take no nonsense. They're not into any of this splash stuff. None of that." He said, they're properly straight shooters, and they really, you stop messing about like that. They take it really personal. He said, "So when you get in the ring, I want you to do a backflip, roll back and flip back on your feet. And then when you get in there, I want you to talk to him, make sure it's over the far corner so his trainer can hear." I went, "Bren, I'm not doing that, Bren." He said, "Get it done." So I'm walking up the ropes into the ring, and as I walk in, he went, "Jump on with the ropes, do what I said." And I'm like, "Bren," I felt like a right dick. He went, "Get it done." Slapped me off. So I jumped on the ropes, did a roly-poly, flipped onto my feet, backflip, put back on again, and put my hands up and shuffled like that. And his trainer went straight away to Crawford. Don't you pay attention to him? Don't let him get in your head. And I thought, shit, because Brendan said if he gets angry, he's not going to be able to relay any useful information to his fighter, and his fighter's going to always go back to the corner, and the corner man's going to be bollocking the fighter, so it's going to be chaos in the corner. He said, "Your opponent is not the problem; it's the coach. You've got to get him mad." So I went back and think, shit. So I put the gum shield in. He said, Brendan said, every time you're over his side, talk to him. So I'd be in the far corner, in Crawford's corner, and I'd be saying, is that all he's got? Is that what he's telling you? He's no idea what he's talking about. So the corner man could hear me disrespecting him. And every time Crawford would go back, he'd be like bollocking Crawford. And he's pointing to me, he was so angry at Brendan and so angry at me. And knocked Crawford down, got back up again. He couldn't believe it. I won. And I can remember a guy called Steve Holmesworth, who used to do the videos and stuff like that. I think he was doing some stuff for the board as well. And he came in the dressing room before the fight. Brendan had gone to like get the money, the purse before the fight. And Steve says, "Good luck tonight, son. You know you're not going to win, don't you? But it'd be a good experience." I thought, you twat. Anyway, I beat him, and it was a good win. And I think that was the start, the turn to me. That was my growth to think, you know what, I'm actually not bad at this. To say I've had 13 amateur fights and only won 3, then I'm beating guys that have done it and done well, and I'm beating guys and I don't know what I'm doing. Can you imagine what happened when I know what I'm doing? So yeah, Brendan, very clever, very unorthodox, very underrated, massively underrated.
Absolutely. I just want to dedicate this episode to Lightning Lee Noble, somebody who was also trained by somebody I spoke to a little while ago, and again got stories from him about Brendan also. So this one's dedicated to him.